So, welcome to Season of Change, transforming your life through the power and the Word of God. I remain your host, Evangelist Jeremiah Joseph from Nigeria. I have my guest here tonight from New York City, United States of America, and she is an author, speaker, a life coach, and a consultant and counselor. And her name is Maria. She will be speaking to us tonight or this evening on raising godly children in ungodly society. So, season of change, transforming your life through the power and the word of God.
How are you?
I'm fine. So, how is New York City?
New York has a lot of changes since born. I was born and raised here, but it has a lot of changes. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of violence, and the subways are a little bit unsafe right now. But I'm praying that God will touch New York and turn some things around.
Wow, that's great. God will do that.
Oh,
So I can
absolutely.
I can see something on your back, on your background. What is that written on the banner?
It says Pretty Divorce. It's the name of my book.
Is the name of your book. That's great.
Yes.
So how many books have you published?
This is actually my first book that I've published. I'm already about 5 or 6 chapters into book 2, but I just recently published the book. People are just starting to read the book this week.
So are you married?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you have kids?
Yes, I have 4 children
Wow,
and
that's
two
great.
grandchildren. Yes.
That means you are fit to talk about this topic we are discussing this evening. So you're qualified for that.
and
So can
and I'm and I'm a guidance counselor.
okay, so how do you come about this topic? How do you get this topic?
What, Pretty Divorce?
No, raising godly children in
Oh,
ungodly environment.
I mean, the because it's a need for it. It's as a believer in Christ, I feel like that is a lot of the problems that we have. It's two problems that I feel plague society. And one is fatherless homes, and the second is the fact that people don't have relationships with the Lord to help them guide their children, guide themselves and their children.
Wow, that's great. So, what do you have to tell us about raising godly children in ungodly society? How do you start that?
Well, I think that parents have to have, so in our society, we have a lot of social media, we have a lot of games, like I don't know, them PS2s and Nintendo and all these things. And so when parents get busy, they allow a lot of other things. YouTube, they allow all these other things to kind of raise their children and keep their children's attention. I think they, in order to raise godly children, parents first have to have a relationship with Christ themselves. And you also have to have strong bonded relationships with your children, where they honor your opinion and your direction. But if we allow TV, games, YouTube, social media, and all these other things to raise our children, that's too much outside influences, and it's not the right influence. So
So,
it starts with relationship with a parent actually having their own relationship with Christ, so that you can be the catalyst of introducing your child to God.
okay, thank you very much. So, if I will ask you, what is your definition for godly children?
Um, my thought on godly children are children that respect their parents, and honor what their parents tell them, whether they agree with it or not. Whether they agree with it or not, they honor their parents and they respect what their parents say and trust that their parents have their best interests at heart. And kids that do respect and honor God as well, because they're being raised in a home that shows Christ, whether it's through marriage. And then there's single parents, single mothers. I was a single mother for a long time, and me and my children stayed in the church. They had to learn about God. It was a requirement. It wasn't until they got older where they can do their own thing. But there was a time when you lived in this house and I'm getting up to go to church on Sunday, you're getting up to go with me too. And my daughter will tell you, I used to say, you don't want to go, you about to go in those pajamas if you don't want to be embarrassed, but you can go in those pajamas. I need you to get up and get dressed and let's go. So, parents have to, and here in America, a lot of the rights of parents were taken away from them. You couldn't chastise your children a certain way. And it had its benefits, but it did a number on homes and how parents were allowed to raise their own children. So I know for some parents it was difficult because kids were given a lot of authority over themselves, making it a lot more difficult for parents to raise them properly. But that's, to me, that's godly children that respect and honor their parents and God as well.
So, if I will ask you, we have a lot of things happening in the world today,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of challenges in our society, a lot of, what would I call it, TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of musical productions that are
Mm-hmm.
somehow and they're well promoted and catching the attentions of our children these days. In the midst of all this, what do you think parents will do, or what are the points or steps you need to give as a counselor to a parent? Okay, if you want to raise your children in the midst of all these shows, television programs, and musical instruments, a lot of dressings that we see today. I don't know in America, but we know here a lot of dressings that are not glorifying God, a lot of things happening. So how can parents raise their children in the midst of all this?
So I think that you have to it all, for me, because of my counseling background, everything starts with relationships. If you build a strong foundational relationship with your children, you have to tell them straight off the bat, like, this is not what we're watching here. We're not, this, things that are not acceptable here. And you have to hold your ground to it. And then you do have to sit down and explain to your children why sometimes. You have some parents that's just like, just listen to what I say and that's it. But it doesn't take anything away from a parent to have seriously deep conversations with their children to explain, this is why I do this. This is why I do that. I'm going to give you an example. My grandson was here and he was watching something. Me and my daughter was talking. We weren't really paying attention, but it had like it was a cartoon, and it had a demon, and the demon was winning, and the demon was being glorified for winning something. I don't know. And I sat first. I explained to my daughter, this is desensitizing him to the enemy and making him comfortable with like demonology and demons being okay and evil type of stuff winning. This is not all right. And I told her, you got to monitor what he's watching. You have to see it. You have to, if it does not agree with God and how you were raised and what you, because parents think that it's cartoons, everything is, no, they're starting very young in cartoons and Blue's Clues and a lot of different shows for children. It's basically programming them and indoctrinating them into something that is not of God. And so you have to be mindful. That's what I'm talking about. The TV. The TV cannot raise your children. And if you do allow them to watch TV, it needs to be monitored, and it needs to be not hours, not hours long. So because if you have a parent that goes to the park and they hang out with their child and they find other things to do, like my son was in football, he was in a bunch of different things that kept him away from the TV and the games. And he loves those games. I'm not going to say he doesn't have them, but his foundation is Christ. I drive a lot of things home to him about what's not acceptable, study the Bible with him, help him to understand what is of God and what is not of God, because our kids are being desensitized to a lot of things that they should be standing up against and saying, no, that's not for me. And it's not to put anybody down, but we as believers have our right to stand up for Christ and what he says is right. And we'll all find out at the end who's really right. But if you're a believer sitting here on the earth, you have to take the stand. It's not going to be easy. The Bible tells us it's not going to be easy, but you have to take a stand and not compromise.
What about parents that are Christians but doesn't go to church? What do you have to say about this and their children, raising up their children in a godly way?
Parents, okay. Right now, with everything that happened after COVID, there's a lot of churches that are on virtual now. They have closed their doors. Some of the churches, more churches are starting to open up their doors for people to come in and stuff. I really do honestly believe that parents need to have some type of they have to be in the word. They have to maybe have a pastor or something. But we can't say that we believe in the Lord and we're not being taught all, or we're not in the word, we're not connecting with the Bible to find out what God has to say about things. We have to be in prayer. So I don't know about, I've had my times where I wasn't possibly going to a church or whatever. And maybe I was transitioning to a new church, or this church was no longer, because I've had churches closed down too and things. And that's before COVID. But I keep in contact with the word. You know what I mean? I stay in prayer. So we can't say we're Christians and we don't do certain things that God tells us we're supposed to be doing.
So, what if I will ask you, what is their advantage? What are those advantages? Advantages that one will get raising his child in a godly way.
Well, first of all, if you raise your children in a godly way, I really do believe that you will get, because we're to me, children are a parent's assign. They're like, God is assigning them to us, right? He's assigning them to us to raise them and raise them up the right way. And so I feel like, first of all, you'll get a nice pat on the back from the Lord. Well done, my good and faithful servant. I trusted you with this child, and you did the right thing. You helped them to know who I am and to honor me. But when you have godly children, they even treat you different than children that might show their parents disrespect. You know what I mean? So there's advantages in that way. Like my mom, I was my mom's caregiver, until she passed away. So, and that's been for years. My mom we never lived separate. But if I didn't have God in my life, I probably would have been about like, well, I'm not responsible for taking care of you. You're an adult, but I felt like it was my obligation. It was my responsibility to stay with my mom and make sure that she was good, make sure that she was getting to doctor's appointments and that people weren't abusing her in any kind of way. So it's a lot of advantages to having godly children because they respect you, they honor you.
So, what can you highlight some of the advantages?
Huh?
Can you highlight some of those advantages?
Like I said, the respect, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? You're
yes.
like for instance, when I used to go to my son's school, I heard nothing but good reports about my son. I've heard nothing but good reports about him, his respect, his manners. I'm not called to school every 5 minutes because my son disrespected the teachers, and so it's a lot of advantage to it. Anything could happen in anybody's life. I just feel like in the world that we live in, God is an anchor, and he gives you a lot peace. There's a lot more peace in your life when you raise godly children. They're not out there causing issues, causing problems. And not all kids are perfect. And there's some kids who do things and their parents have no clue what they're out there doing. But for the most part, my experience has been that, I get nothing but good reports. My son knows how to respect elders. He knows when he talks to people, he has to represent himself in a certain way because he thinks about the fact that I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing my parents. And my mother will have a conversation with me that I might not want to have if I'm out here acting unruly. So I just think that it's a lot of advantages to raising your children in the admonition of the Lord.
Wow, that's great. Thank you very much. So, what are the disadvantages raising not raising your children in a godly way?
You have behavior issues in school as far as disrespect, calls constantly. You have your children in places that they have no business being, doing things that they like. Children that when you raise them about thinking about the Lord and thinking that the Lord is watching and the Lord is with them, they think differently about their behavior and what type of things they get into. Children that's not raised with some type of guideline or guidance or the Lord, they find themselves involved in a lot of different activities, drugs, alcohol, sex, And I was a teenager, and I wasn't raised in the Lord. I didn't get into the Lord until I was 28 years old. So I did a lot of things when I was a teenager, not focusing on the fact that I had a God that died for me, that and I didn't know about respect of my temple. You understand what I'm saying? So when kids don't know things, they find themselves they succumb to peer pressure. My son was offered marijuana when he was in school. We talked about it. He was offered marijuana in school, and his response was, God wouldn't want me to do that. I don't, y'all could do that, that's y'all, but I'm not getting involved in that. So it's a difference for kids that don't really have like that moral compass to follow. you know they get themselves involved into a lot of different things. I've seen parents time and time again coming to the school for whatever the case may be, fighting, kids smoking in the stairwells, different things, because they won't have the same honor and respect for that children that's raised with God in mind would.
So I want to, what are those strategies that our society are using to have influence over our children these days?
It's some of it is in music, a lot of it is on TV, you know. Like I said, they glorify, and if you look at movies, if you look at movies today, a lot more of the movies are have like demonic type of activities in it. It's glorified, you know, it's glorified. Like it makes it look like the enemy is to be evil and wicked and things like that. That's where it's at. You don't see. And then even when you, like, for instance, I was going to do another podcast, and the woman asked me on a questionnaire. She asked me what type of things did I help me to get through trauma and all, like, self-defeating thoughts. And I say prayer. I said I did a lot of praying, and so her response to me was, if faith was an integral part of your story, then and we have to talk about that, then this ain't for you. My podcast isn't for you, because I don't mind people's faith, but we don't talk about that here. And my response was, thanks for the offer. I appreciate you considering me. But if anybody anywhere in this world think that I'm not going to say that God helped me to get where I am today and keep to my mind, I don't need to be in that place, but there's a lot of shows that you'll see people will say stuff like, the universe and they talk about all, say all kind of things, but they will not say Jesus's name. They won't say, they'll say the higher power. They'll say, but he's been given the name above every name. So if you can't say the name, then I don't belong on your show. But you have a lot of shows where they won't say his name, but they'll glorify the devil. They'll talk about all kind of stuff. They got a show, Lucifer. They got all kinds of things that, that helps to kind of desensitize our children to who God is and the things that God says we should do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Lastly, what do you think we can do in order to save those children that are fall victims of all these strategies of the world? How can we save them? How can we help them out?
So I believe that more Christian people, more believers, we're gonna have to go out. We're gonna, because I think we've become very comfortable in the four walls of the church when our ministry is on the outside. And so we're gonna, like, when I worked with children, I'm gonna be honest, I would, if they asked me or if we had a conversation about it, I would be honest about what I believed and what helped me. You know what I mean? We cannot compromise, and we can't be afraid to say who got us to where we are. And we have to start going out there getting our children. But if we have, as parents, if we raise our children more godly, our children will infect those children with the gospel. You know what I mean? Because kids will listen more to children than they will adults. So the more we believers empower our children to be able to stand up for Christ, the more they'll be comfortable to say to their friends, no, that's not okay. God is, like my son was like, that's what y'all want to do. But he wasn't empowered to say, you know what? God doesn't want you to do that. He just kept saying what I'm not going to do. some children might need to be out there going after these children, and because they get to mix and mingle with them, and they have to be seed planters. So not only do we have to raise our children godly, we got to empower them to be able to not only stand up for themselves, but to plant seeds wherever they can.
So I just want you to give just a word of advice to our churches concerning, because a lot of churches are neglecting the ministry of the children. So what advice do you have for them? Just in a few minutes.
Yeah, I would just say that, find a really, really good youth pastor that's powerful in the Lord to work with children and empower the children. I do believe that we should maybe separate the kids from the adults. You know what I mean? I like that model. It works because you have somebody working with those children and helping them to understand God on their level. You know what I mean? Not sitting in with the adults and they not really understanding everything that's being told. I think that works. That model works. I used to love it. My son and them used to go to youth church while I was in the church with the pastor, and we was with all the adults, and they learned a lot about Christ through that avenue.
Wow, thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking your time to be with us on this platform, Season of Change. And I just want you to give us the contact details, how people can reach you in order they need your service, they want to get in touch with you.
Yes, so I am on Instagram, and it's marie.d.mosley. And my book is Pretty Divorce, and it's on, and I talk about children in there as well. It's a huge chapter on children in there that's going through, different things. So the book is on theprettydivorce.com. And and on Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm Marie Mosley. So if they look up my name, it's they'll find me. And I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to have a copy of your book sent to me with your autograph on it.
Okay.
So I will email you my address so that you can send it to me.
Okay.
I really appreciate you having you on this platform.
Yes.
It's a great pleasure. And I would like us to hold another podcast meeting so that we can discuss about the pretty divorce. Because I want us to dig into it and see what is pretty about the divorce.
Yes. So just email me your address and I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. Nice having you. This is Season of Change, transforming your life through the power and the word of God. We really enjoyed our guests tonight, and it was great having her on this platform. We believe that we'll be having her again on the next episode of about another topic about our book, The Pretty Divorce, and it's going to be a great one. I believe all our audience will enjoy having her again. God bless you till we meet again. Thank you very much.
God bless you.